At that point, we'd been together for almost a year, and we had been promising people hardware around the summer of 1995. And of course, as usual schedules go, we were a little bit late with the hardware.
And now we didn't have any chips then. We didn't have boards. We had nothing.
We ran around to everyone with these movie loops, where we actually, the simulator made a movie, and we would show these movies and go, this is what our chip does. Now this isn't real, but when it is real, this is what our chip will do. And no one believed it.
Andy showed me a demo, which I thought was the real thing, and they didn't really mention that they didn't have a product yet.
As resourceful as Ross always is, he came up with the idea that, well, you know, we're basically implementing technology very similar to what SGI did on their very high-end graphics subsystem, which at the time was a reality engine. So why don't we go out and buy a reality engine and show what our technology is going to look like?
One of the things that we knew coming into this, and this was from our SGI experience, was that demos are really important. That you can talk about megapixels per second, triangles per second, but especially in our field of endeavor, unless you've got some demos that show people what all this means, they don't get it, and they don't believe you. And you know what comes up in all these meetings with these Japanese folks is, what about the fighting the game? And so we had these two characters. There was Anubis and then Nefertiti, Egyptian kind of themed, and we had already signed up Fujitsu and Orchid to sell our products, even though we didn't have any products to sell, and talked Orchid into letting us put the reality engine in their booth at Comdex behind a wall.
People would look at it and they'd say, well, isn't that what it looks like when you run it on the Silicon Graphics reality engine? We said, yeah. And they said, well, and you're going to have a chip that'll do that? And we said, yeah. And they said, right.
Diamond Multimedia was right behind us, showing their first product based on NVIDIA, which was terrible. And they had this clunky looking stuff. And we've got this cool texture mapped reality engine thing, and they were so pissed off.
And Steven Johnson, who's from Diamond, he used to come into our booth and he'd scream at the top of his lungs, "That's not a chip!"
We were selling for months on end with nothing. I mean, with a piece of paper.
Meanwhile, we'd gotten chips in.
You know Gary and Scott and how talented they are, so kind of had a good feeling about it, but you never really know until these things come back what it really does.
This is on Super Bowl Sunday, and I don't even remember who was in the damn Super Bowl that year.
You build a chip, and it may come back and it may be perfect, but it usually takes us days or even weeks.
They made a couple of fixes to some software, got this new chip in, hit return, and presto, up came the SGI flight simulator, just like it works on a reality engine.
We ran it, and it just worked, and it was running, you know, absolutely phenomenal rates.
That was the moment of truth. And we had this thing running, it was like, you know, we are going to pull this thing off.
We invited the representative from Microsoft to come see the hardware just weeks after we brought it up. All of us are very nervous because this is Microsoft standing in front of our new product. We showed him these kind of stupid demos, which is like tunnel and twist, and he didn't say anything. And now, I mean, your mouth is dry, you're just dying. And finally he looked and he said to someone, he turned and he said, you know, you've just leapfrogged an entire industry. So then what happened is that he invited us to be the principal demo for Bill Gates' opening speech at WinHack.
So here on this giant 60-foot screen is Bill Gates playing Valley of Raw.
We were showing stuff that people could just not believe.
People were looking under the table for the SGI machine. They couldn't believe it.
They're looking for the fat table.
Yeah, exactly.
Bill was watching it so intensely that he lost track of where he was during his talk.
We actually had, you know, our competitors over there, you know, an inch from the screen staring at this thing, just sweating, literally, not knowing what in the world to say about it.
And here are all these guys that, you know, we had told, we're going to build this, and it's going to work, and it's going to do this. And they all said, you can't do that. No one can do that. And there he was playing it. You know, when we first started, we didn't have any money. We were spending all this money on workstations and tools and everything for the engineers. And so we were looking for a space, and found this building over by the Sunnyvale Golf Course.
When we first started, I remember pulling up, and it just reminded me of like an old motel.
It's just a giant trailer.
We had mice. The electricity was all done by non-union or probably even non-knowledgeable people.
Cables running all over the place. 30 feet of Ethernet cable down the hall to a hub because we didn't have any wiring through the ceiling.
Extra software and hardware at the time. We're down in this warehouse, and it was literally a warehouse.
And had no windows, and we called that the dungeon.
There were big garage doors that opened up, and half of the summer we would have them open because the air conditioner never worked.
The birds would just fly in through the building, you know, wreaking havoc.
We had a little family of birds that lived on top of the alarm bell.
There was a camp that wanted to kill the birds, and there was a camp that said, no way.
With the help of Ross and Alma, we put up a birdhouse.
The desks weighed about 1,000 pounds each.
For almost probably a year, you know, people were actually using these abandoned pieces of furniture that we found them randomly on the porch.
And I think that if there was a nuclear war, you'd be very safe under one of these desks.
It was truly a wonderful building. It was out overlooking the 8th hole of the Sunnyvale Public Golf Course.
People would be designing, and golf balls would bounce into the window.
One of the engineers had this big bucket that collected balls.
So we collected over 100 golf balls in buckets. Nobody ever got hurt.
We spent, you know, basically 24/7 at the office. We'd get up, we'd go to the office. You know, when we got tired, we'd go home, go to sleep, and wake up and come back to the office.
I interviewed when I went over there, and I saw mattresses in one of the hallways, and some of the software guys that spent 24, 48 hours working straight, taking some naps.
I remember one night I drove home about 4 in the morning and woke up in a ditch by the side of the freeway. I just fell asleep and drove off.
Brian Hook, one of the early engineers, he was one of the ones who, they used to consume mass quantities of Coca-Cola. So I remember one day him calling up like one of our administrators, we're out of soda, right? And so, okay, I'll like run down to like Lucky's and get a couple 6-packs. And Brian would go like, no, you don't understand. We need a pallet of soda.
After Helen came on board, she didn't realize that we were all adamant about the beer that we drink. We have a lot of beer drinkers. So she tried to go out and like just buy Bud Light, and there was this big revolt. You can't buy Bud Light. We need microbrewed beer.
Dave Bowman has a unique paging system. Dave used to be all the way across the building. This is a relatively small building. But off in the distance, about every 10 minutes, I'd hear, Melissa!
Kristen Montgomery she might as well just have purchased a home in Japan her first 6 months of the company.
Kristen got to go to Japan many times with Ross.
Lugging a huge machine and going through the subway the whole time.
Kristen was the mule.
I was the mule.
So Gary and myself and a bunch of people who were in Hudson, Massachusetts were sitting listening to Ross.
The same stuff that we're selling to the Air Force today, Diamond will be selling to consumers, next Christmas.
This guy is amazing. He could sell a sack of dog crap as gold to somebody.
Andy Keene kept looking out there, and he didn't have confidence that there were orders there. And
I called my contact aside and I said, look, we will give you this product for free for 6 months. No cost to you, for free. And they said no.
He would forecast really, really low.
We're in big trouble. Because this is the proverbial, I could not give my product away.
When I went to the game developers to start with, and they're like, okay, how many units have you sold? None. How many partners do you have? 1, maybe 2,
I heard people rumbling about these orders, but not knowing where these orders were.
We had taken a strategy where we were approaching OEMs, like PC OEMs, Gateway, Compaq.
I collected all these pieces of paper off of people's desks and files, etc., and put it all down on one piece of paper, and we developed what was known as, or is known as, a backlog, and it was 1 page. And every time we got an order from that point on, we had this bell, and we'd ring the bell.
It's amazing how fast the success of a company can change.
This is our backlog today.